The LA Clippers look to bounce back from their abomination on Thursday night against the Nuggets when they went to Minnesota on Friday. And without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, it was the same old story of not learning much about this team. Now that we're at the halfway point, can we assess this Clipper team and really keep it real about how the season has been? What do we have going for us going forward? And how did the guys play without Kawhi and Paul in this Timberwolves game? Going to be getting into all of that on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, in my 18th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod, and of course, subscribe to my own YouTube channel known as Dime Dropper, where I went off last night as the Clippers have reached their halfway point of the season and stand at 21-20. Remember, you should also subscribe to Locked On Clippers on YouTube and let me know, do the Clippers still have a chance to win this championship? Let me know right now that we're at the halfway point, because I would just ask, what do you think of the Clippers' first half of the season? But I know the responses are going to be, it's terrible, it's overwhelmingly disappointing reviews. So, and you have every reason to feel that way. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking first. I think the game is so irrelevant. Like the game that took place on Friday night was so irrelevant. I think that's going to be saved for segment 2, because I think we just got to talk about the approach, right? 21-20, 41 games into the season. We heard Nico Batum say that don't expect anything till Christmas. And I remember I did an episode a couple weeks back, and I said he looked like he was right. Well, it looks like I was wrong for jumping the gun. Kawhi Leonard also had his quote before the season. It's going to be a dark tunnel, but then it's going to be filled with light and joy. Well, there's no light and joy so far. The 21-20 record is indicative of the lack of chemistry, the lack of continuity, and the lack of a consistent product that we have seen from the Clippers so far this season. It absolutely reflects how good they are at this moment in time. And thankfully for the Clippers, the West is so topsy-turvy that they find themselves in like 6th or 7th place on this Saturday on January 7th, 2023. They're very lucky with that. But in other years, this would be 8-9 seed. And honestly, a couple of wins. I mean, the Lakers, for God's sake, who were 2-10 to start the season, are on the Clippers' tails right now. Thankfully, the Lakers are going to play Sacramento on Saturday, so it'll be a win-win situation for the Clippers either way. Clippers are going to be seeing Atlanta next to start a nice little 5-game homestand. So that's what the Clippers desperately need. It's been a lot of road games recently. They hit a tough part of the schedule, but now they got a nice little homestand to work with, starting with Atlanta. And Atlanta has, you want to talk about teams that are even more dysfunctional than the Clippers right now? The Hawks are in turmoil with the whole Nate McMillan situation. They got absolutely destroyed by the Lakers at the Staples Center on Friday night. So hopefully the Clippers will bounce back in that one, and Kawhi Leonard should play, barring anything unforeseen. Also, a couple of tough games after that at home. The Dallas Mavericks, who are playing really good basketball, especially that guy number 77. And then his Eastern European counterpart, Denver Nuggets, the Nikola Jokic. We see them again on Friday, January 13th. A nice little Friday the 13th game on ESPN. So another chance to potentially embarrass themselves on national TV against the Nuggets, or show some improvement. And then the Houston Rockets next Sunday at 12. Go out to that game because it's going to be a cheap ticket, and the Clippers absolutely should destroy the Rockets, who are the worst team in the NBA right now. And then a rematch against the Sixers. And Glenn Rivers just said Embiid is out indefinitely right now with no timetable to return. So that is really concerning for the Sixers, but also considering how he played against the Clippers in the last matchup to start that road trip, it would be nice to play against the Sixers without Embiid. But let's talk about the approach, right? So Kawhi Leonard and Paul George did not play against the Timberwolves, and I was really disappointed. Not that Paul George didn't play, because I said in the episode after the Denver game that Paul George didn't look right. So if Paul George is not looking right, sit him until he's okay, until he looks like he's actually trying out there, because the effort level against Denver was non-existent. It was just, as I said in that episode, shooting a bunch of jumpers, settling, and not playing any defense, not looking like he really cared. Kawhi Leonard, though, having not played against Minnesota, is really disappointing. Now, I know that it's ACL load management, and they don't want him to overexert himself, and that playing back-to-backs was not on the schedule for this season for him. But damn it, we just got blown out by 30-plus points. I know the final score was like 21 points, but it was a 30-plus point blowout, and Kawhi Leonard didn't even play a minute in the second half. And, you heard Reggie Miller and Kevin Harlan, and, they're not the local broadcasters, so they're not as tapped in with the team. But they were saying probably Kawhi and Paul are going to play against Minnesota. And, Ty Lue was talking about worrying about the back-to-back. What you mean worrying about the back-to-back? There's nothing to worry about when Kawhi Leonard and Paul George aren't going to play in that next game. That was his defense to take the starters out for the second half on Thursday night, we're preparing for the back-to-back. Well, Kawhi Leonard and Paul didn't play, so the only people you're really protecting are Zubats, Reggie, and Senior, who quite frankly need protecting because they've been working their butts off with the Clippers for 3 consecutive years, day in, day out, with no resting or anything really, playing a ton of games, especially Reggie and Ivica Zubats. But it's gone to the point now where you just really got to question the seriousness of this Clipper organization when it comes to the way they've approached this regular season. And I expressed my concerns very early in the season. And I'm not going to lie, and I know this might sound surprising to you, but I've really tried to tone down the negativity on Locked On Clippers, because I've seen that as opposed to my personal channel where it's fans from everywhere, even though Clippers are my majority, but I got a lot of Laker fans on there, a lot of everything. They like to see the Clippers down bad. They like to see how I react to that. Whereas Locked On Clippers is mostly all Clipper fans, and the ratings and the views and whatever, the listens are better when we win. And I want to stay positive. Like, I am a positive guy when it comes to the Clippers, believe it or not. But I was saying that I saw things that didn't align with what I expected from a team that has championship aspirations very early in the season. And the way that the team, but mainly the organization, was kind of devaluing these regular season games and kept saying, well, we're going to figure it out. It's all about June. It's all about this April. It's all about getting right at the right time. I don't disagree with that. But it has come at the expense of building any chemistry and taking this regular season seriously. Kawhi Leonard even said, I'm not worried about the regular season. It doesn't matter. It's all about, June, April, May. There's not going to be any Clipper basketball in May if this continues. I'm just being 100 with you. There's not going to be. And, I know Kawhi says he wants to get out on the court and all that, and I really appreciate his frustration with that he got taken out of the second half of the Denver game and he couldn't kind of redeem himself for a bad first half. But that comment says to me he's not really worried about the regular season. But at this point, we need people to be worried about it because this is not right. It's not right to the fans that you've sold a championship vision to. That Jerry West and Paul George sat in front of my face and talked about how this team means business. And I know they're referring to the end. But again, this is not the approach of a team that has not won a championship before. This is the type of team that acts like they've won something and they think that as long as they get to the playoffs healthy, they're okay. And I totally disagree with that because right now you can't just flip the switch to a championship contender when you've built no rhythm and chemistry with the team. This is not a good team right now. Ty Lue's made bad decisions even when everyone's been healthy. They haven't, and that's the thing. Every single time Kawhi and Paul are healthy, you feel like it's a must-win game for the Clippers because you don't see them on the court very frequently together. But the thing is, losses are going to happen because they're not used to playing with one another all the time. So losses are just going to happen. You grow with those losses, but they feel so much bigger because they constantly miss games. And then you take voluntary losses where you learn nothing about the team, and it puts Ty Lue in a win-win situation. Because if they lose, it's like, oh, we just didn't have our guys. And if we win, it's look how great Ty Lue is being able to inspire these players to get wins without their stars. And you know what? Quite frankly, I think it has saved Ty Lue a little bit in terms of criticism because, yeah, he can motivate the Canoes, as we call it, the Clippers that are underdogs to win games. But it's all about, we didn't hire Ty Lue to have a mediocre team that overachieves. We wanted Ty Lue to take the Clippers to a championship and make history. And right now, he has not shown in this season, not in the past, but in this season that he's the right man for the job because right now he's making mistakes. However, I still believe in him. And the team's lack of prioritization of the regular season is something that has lasted all these years that Kawhi has come here. From the Glenn Rivers year where they barely practiced with one another and they had the whole article about Kawhi, showing up late and stuff, all that stuff. So it is what it is, but coming up, going to be talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves games. Anything good to take? How did the young guys play? Going to be talking about it all coming up. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. I got my Rams ambassador job on LinkedIn, and I'm really appreciative of them for that. You can also look to hire people on LinkedIn. It's not just if you're looking for a job, because LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. And in 2023, the new year has begun. Find the right candidates and employees that fit your business vision. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find those qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Just post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's get into this game. The Clippers and the Minnesota Timberwolves on Friday night. The Timberwolves, obviously without Karl-Anthony Towns, who's been out for a while. They're 19-21 after this win, Minnesota, right on the Clippers' tails. They've started to play better basketball of late, and you could see they were looking pretty good in this game. They've won 3 consecutive games, all against Western Conference playoff-type opposition. Denver, Portland, and the Clippers. So they're starting to play well, and in this game, one of our old friends, not really a friend, our old enemies, had a great game. Rudy Gobert. He was not as effective defensively as most games that I've seen him play against the Clippers, but he still was a presence down there. But it was his offense, his presence on the interior that was so overwhelming. 25 points and 21 rebounds in this game. Yes, that's a Moses Malone-like stat line on 11 for 15 shooting. And I'll tell you how it happened. Started with the first quarter. The Clippers actually only trailed by 4 after 1, 33-37. And the starting lineup was the usual 3, Reggie Sr. and Zoo, and then Terrence Mann and Luke Kennard. And I thought that the beginning of the game, the refs were completely being unfair to the Clippers. There were a lot of really weak calls. Terrence Mann got a technical and the ball literally slipped out of his hands and just kind of bounced off the ground hard after a foul that he committed. And that was no good. Marcus Morris Sr. had 7 points in the first quarter, and then he only had 5 points the rest of the way. He had 12 points on 5 for 11 shooting and 2 for 5 from deep. So it was a decent senior game. Only played 25 minutes, but defensively just not really doing much. And of course, he doesn't really create for anyone else. The only starter with 0 assists. I really believe that seniors' minutes need to be cut down, and we could potentially need to talk about removing him from the starting lineup, just because what I said before the season even started has started to age well. In the beginning, it aged terribly, but I think again, I shouldn't have doubted myself, and I should have stuck with my conviction that eventually, the really, really hot shooting from Senior to start the season was going to run out, and his defense would kind of regress back to what we saw. Now, I do think what we saw before this season. Now, I do think he's been better defensively, even when you talk about the last 5-10 games, than the previous 2 seasons he's been with the Clippers, or 2.5. But overall, I think he needs to go to the bench. Who do I put in the starting lineup for him? Nico Oroko, but preferably Nico, who was the initial choice I had before the season began. For a second, the Clippers, when Terrence Mann got in foul trouble or got the technical, he came out of the game, and the Clippers put in Norman Powell. You know what that means? 3-guard set. Reggie, Luke, and Norm, and immediately it was getting punished. D'Angelo Russell, the guy, he tends to play really well against the Clippers, it seems, at least the last couple of times. Obviously, the play-in game comes to mind. He had 25 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and was absolutely cooking us in the pick and roll. That Gobert, the thing about him is he's not a great offensive player at all, but he's a great screener. He's such a big body. And even Terrence Mann, whose screen navigation is probably the best on this Clipper team, he was even struggling to get into D'Angelo Russell's rear view and stay on his hip going over those Gobert screens. And you know what was becoming a problem was Zubac has to step up. If Terrence Mann's completely out of the play or guys are out of the play because Gobert's screens are so good, and mind you, it was the same with Mitchell and Gobert. We struggled with that. Zubac has to step up, right? He can't just play 2 at once all the time. You're asking a lot of him. But the rotations, and if you watch the telecast, Mike Fratello, the czar, was saying it in commentary, the rotations have to be sharp. If Zubac is going to step up at the ball handler because Terrence or whoever's guarding the screener has been taken out of the play with the screen, you got to have a rotation to Gobert. And that rotation was severely lacking. Now, when those rotations are Norman Powell's, Luke Kennard's, and Reggie Jackson's rotating onto Gobert, they have to get there before the pass is thrown to Gobert. They have to get there and prevent the pass from getting to him. Because if the second Gobert gets the ball under the basket or rolling against Reggie, Kennard, or Powell, that's basically like no one's rotating. It's a layup for him. It's easy. So the rotations were really poor. I thought that's the reason why they got killed by Gobert so much. And then offensively, they got killed on the glass by him as well. We saw a lot of Moses Brown in this game, a lot. And look, I think he was trying really hard. I think he had some good moments on the glass. He got a lot of offensive rebounds, but he's a tough watch to me. He's just slow-footed, like really slow-footed. He's not very coordinated when it comes to comparing him to other NBA players. And his hands are a little suspect, and just he can't really get off the ground like that. I don't know. He's not a player that you want playing actual minutes to me in a championship setting, with a team with championship aspirations. I think he can give you some spot minutes against bad teams, but not against teams like Minnesota, who are not a bad team. They're actually a very average team. I think they're actually a good team that has started out playing very average basketball this season. But remember, they gutted their depth for Gobert. So it's going to take time for this to work out. And Anthony Edwards was playing really uncharacteristically bad to start the season, and D'Angelo Russell as well. But they've both started to come alive lately. And Gobert without Karl Anthony Towns, it's a more natural fit, it seems. So they're playing better basketball of late. As for the three-guard set, after the Clippers called a timeout when D'Angelo made a floater and made it a 10-point game, Amir Coffey came in for Reggie Jackson. Moses Brown came in for Luke Kennard. John Wall came in for Zoo. And immediately, Norman Powell and John Wall did their thing. Norman Powell had 12 points in the first quarter. One was a beautiful left-handed high-arcing layup over Gobert. Another one where he pushed the pace on a fast break and got a goaltend. And then a beautiful Spain pick and roll where Norman popped up after setting a screen for the roller. And a three before the end of the quarter. So 12 points for Norm. John Wall also had 4 points, both of them on Austin Rivers, but the 37 points allowed in the first was no good. And that was because of what I said before. The rotations were slow, and the three-guard set, just for a couple of minutes, got killed. However, am I going to blame Ty Lue for it? Not too much, because he didn't have Nico either. He was still out with that sprained ankle, so you're missing 3 wing players. The good thing is Robert Covington got to play, and you saw a lot of him in the second quarter, and I thought he had some decent moments. There was a nice steal he had and a lefty layup to make it a 49-53 game, but after that, that was it. The Clippers got killed. Even though Zoo had some nice finishes against Rudy, another really tough game for Zoo. He just hasn't had a great stretch lately. He only had 9 points, and he only rebounded twice in 21 minutes of play. Moses Brown played 27 minutes, and he had 14 points and 11 rebounds, but 10 of those were offensive rebounds. I think he could have done a better job in the defensive glass, but still, he had a better game than Zoo, who we need a big game from against Atlanta. We really do. But when the Clippers got blitzed at the end of the quarter, it's just, the Wolves are just a better team on the given day. Kyle Anderson was playing really well. My second favorite player of all time, Kyle Anderson. I'm sorry, my second favorite college player of all time, Kyle Anderson. And the Wolves took a 68-54 lead into the half. 68 points is just way too much. And again, Reggie Jackson, 1 for 9 from the field, 18 minutes and 2 points. When Reggie Jackson doesn't play well in the games that Kawhi and Paul aren't there, it's very hard for the Clippers to win. Because Reggie is I feel like Reggie Jackson is the poster boy for the non-Kawhi and Paul George Clippers. Like this era of the 2-1-3 era without Kawhi and Paul, the first person you think of to me is Reggie. And he 1 for 9. I mean, another terrible game. It's time to make the hard decisions and have a conversation with Reggie. What that decision is? Going to be talking about that coming up. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. The Utah Jazz and the Chicago Bulls are going to be involved in a probably closely contested game on Saturday, and the Chicago Bulls are plus 1.5. But I would take that line because they're really starting to play good basketball of late. Zach LaVine had 41 points the other night. So maybe things are starting to turn in Chicago. The money line is plus 103 to bet on the Bulls, and you can do that on Bet Online. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at betonline.net as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Just head to the website today or use a mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, so the second half of the game was a lot of Moses Brown, Terrence Mann, and again, Terrence Mann, he didn't have a good shooting night. He had 10 points. He was 3 for 10, but again, his effort is so great. And he really adds an element of a good transition player to the Clippers. I love seeing Terrence on the open floor because he's a really strong finisher. He goes all the way, doesn't shy away from contact, and he's an athlete. The Clippers people talk about the Clippers and say their weaknesses are they're kind of old, slow, unathletic. Well, Terrence Mann and Amir Coffey help solve a lot of those issues, to be honest, especially Terrence. So, again, we know the formula. Let's play them more. As for the Reggie Jackson thing I just teased, to me, the adjustment needs to be a serious conversation with Reggie and say, look, you're the man. You've done so many great things with the Clippers, but he's just been worn down. He's 2 years older than that 2021 version. I don't think we're going to see a repeat of that 2021 Reggie come back. He's played so many minutes the last 2 years as a loyal soldier to this franchise, and it's time for him to just be a vibes guy like Robert Covington was, a cheerleader kind of thing. Like, just unless we're completely decimated, he shouldn't be playing. He doesn't add enough. He doesn't play hard enough, for one. His defense is non-existent. He's not a good defender, and when he tries, he's decent at best. And then it's just, if his shot's not falling, he doesn't do anything. He doesn't really create much. John Wall is a much better playmaker than him, even without a consistent jump shot. I think the adjustment is to just do this. Start John, and then play with John, PG, Kawhi, Nico, and Zoo. That should be the starting lineup going forward, in my opinion. Now, do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. I think Reggie will start on Sunday against Atlanta because Ty is so loyal to him. But I just don't see it. I think that even if Reggie has good games, he might come back on Sunday with the home crowd and have 20 points. He's just not his style of play. The guys that just, when their shot's not falling, they can't contribute in other ways. Those are the guys like Lou, even happened to Lou Williams with the bubble. Those guys just aren't great for playoff basketball. I mean, as much as I love this player, love him. Even Jamal Crawford, his value would go down a lot in the playoffs because he would see better defenders, and when his shot wasn't falling, that wasn't the pick and roll spacing era. So although now I think Jamal Crawford's impact would be even higher in terms of the pick and roll, but when his shot wasn't falling, he struggled to get going. And those kind of players in the playoffs, I just think that they're a waste of a spot in the rotation. I want guys that can guard in the playoffs. So off the bench, if John Wall starts, that leaves the Clippers with Norman Powell, Luke Kennard, and then Terrence, Marcus Morris, and Rocco. I love that, actually. And I think when John is load managed, the Clippers should start Kennard and just go point Paul George and Kawhi and Kennard all splitting ball handling duties. I think that should be the strategy. And then when Kawhi sits, you can play Marcus and Nico together. But overall, I think the Clippers need to turn it up right now. To get to that 52-win mark, the Clippers need to go 31-10 the remainder of the season. Do I think they can do that? Yeah, I think they can. Do I think they will? Probably not, because I've seen nothing to go off of. Luke Kennard, one good thing about this game, it's actually not a good thing. He got injured again, and it was that calf strain. The same one that he missed games with. So I'm really worried about that. I'm really worried about Kennard. He's just not been able to stay on the court this year, and he's so important for what the Clippers do. Do I think the Clippers can still win a bunch of games without him? Yeah, I do, but especially when he actually kind of got back on track shooting the ball. He was 4 for 8 from the field and 1 for 2 from deep. But yeah, Robert Covington, 12 points and 6 rebounds on 3 of 7 shooting. He's still struggling from three though, and a couple of them are just not great shots, but there were a couple decent ones, and he still couldn't make it. It was 1 for 4 from there, but overall, I liked what I saw from Rocco. And then Norman Powell, 21 points and 6 boards on 9 for 14 shooting and 3 for 5 from deep. 12 of those obviously came in the first quarter, but Norman Powell is playing really well, and I see him having a good game against Atlanta as well. And then John Wall, he actually had a good game too. 14 points, 8 assists. He was actually even in the plus-minus in 26 minutes on 6 for 12 shooting. So he was efficient, and he only shot 1 3. So that's the John Wall I want to see. Getting out in the open court, attacking the basket. I thought he was good. Him, Norman Powell, Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard, Moses Brown, they were okay. We even saw 19 minutes of Amir Coffey, but he struggled. Even though his plus-minus is plus 15, he struggled. He was 1 for 5. But hey, we'll take the plus minus, plus 15. But the Clippers lose it 128-115. They outscored the Timberwolves 36-28 in the fourth quarter when the game was decided. They really never made a push in the second half. And for the second straight game, the Clippers got blown out. They lost 5 games in a row now. And they didn't really make a push in that second half. The Timberwolves did a good job of answering everything, and Gobert was dominant. He even had moments coming up the court where he was trying to be a point guard. I thought that was kind of embarrassing, quite frankly. Gobert, as I said, 25 and 21. Kyle Anderson, 12 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists on 5 for 7 shooting. Just a really good game for him. 18 points for Jaden McDaniels on 6 for 10 shooting and 3 for 6 from deep. Thought he was really good. And then, as I said, D'Angelo Russell, 25, 5, and 4. And then 3 guys off the bench were in double figures as well for them. Taurean Prince had 10. Naz Reid had 10. And Jalen Noel had 14. Although the Clippers did have 4 guys in double figures off the bench as well with Moses, Norman, John, and Rocco. So that's it for me today, guys. You can follow this podcast, or should I say subscribe to this podcast, and tell me, can the Clippers still win the championship even given a 21-20 first half of the season? They got to do a little Boston Celtics-like stuff in terms of last year's Celtics second half of the season turnaround stuff at this point. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. If you want to see a more uncensored version of this, of just me just going nuts, check out Dime Dropper last night. Subscribe to that. And, of course, subscribe to Locked On Clippers, your only 5-day-a-week Clipper podcast. I'll be at the game on Sunday. There'll be a vlog on my channel for that and an episode of Locked On Clippers on Monday morning. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and hopefully we break this losing streak. The age-old proverb continues, go Clippers.